Down the Rabbit Hole would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we record this podcast on. We acknowledge their continuing connections to the land, culture, and community. We pay respect to elders past, present, and future, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
This episode of Down the Rabbit Hole has completely confused Bagel. It contains drug references.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole, the podcast where we try and answer those tough questions our kids ask us. We research the questions and come here to discuss the answers we find, and some of the more interesting aspects of the rabbit holes we fall down. Warning, we are not experts on the topics we discuss. Enjoy! I am Karter, and rumour has it the man joining me today is the inspiration behind the moon landing. Felix, welcome.
You got me again there, Karter. That's yeah, I was behind it. Thanks for having me.
And this week's special guest, rumour has it, is the inspiration behind the moon landing. Bagel, welcome.
So, did I give him the inspiration to give me the inspiration, or what's going on here? I feel like I'm just getting caught in a loop here.
You know how computers work, right?
I'm very confused.
You're the meat in the sandwich.
It is the best part.
There's so many grabs right there. Today's episode is brought to you by lightning because it's bright and distracting, just like Bagel's hairdo. So that the listeners can get to know who we are, each week we give them the opportunity to ask the three of us a question. If you'd like to ask us a question, you can find the link in the form in the show notes below, or on our website, rabbitholepod.com. Today's question is, what was the last book you read? Bagel, why don't you go first?
I can't read. No, I'm kidding. The last book that I read, well, it's actually the most recent book that I've even started reading. I haven't read in many, many years, but it's The Courage to be Disliked. It's a self-help genre sort of thing. Quite nice, actually. Quite an easy read.
Do you find it easier to be disliked now?
How do I answer this one without digging myself a very deep hole? Yes. No, it's more so about living for yourself and not living to satisfy others, if that makes sense.
That sounds like a good way to live.
Well, no, I haven't finished reading the book yet.
And you can't implement anything until you've read the whole thing.
I can't read.
How about you, Felix? What have you read recently?
Well, just tonight I read The Smeds and the Smooths by Julia Donaldson. It's one of my favorites, to be honest. I read that with my boys quite frequently.
Interestingly, I would have no idea what you're talking about, except for it was a conversation that I had with my in-laws because they watched it on ABC TV recently with my boys.
Oh, it's on ABC TV. I have to find that. I'm going to love it for
there
sure.
You go. We're all about sharing here.
So that won't be the first Julia Donaldson book that's been turned into a show either. The Gruffalo and also the Gruffalo's Child, I know, have both been turned into half-hour shows. They're fantastic. Really, really good.
Interesting. The only books that I'm reading at the moment are Mem Fox, and I feel like I've got a whole library worth of Mem Fox's books. I mean, she does great work, but I feel like there's got to be other authors out there for kids, right?
There are plenty. I'll put some in the show notes for you, Karter.
Thanks.
Just let me know how to access the show notes.
Timeless classic, The Hungry, Hungry Caterpillar. Come on.
Yeah, actually, we do have that, and the boys love it.
It's timeless.
I believe it's actually very similar to your youngest son currently.
Oh, yes, he doesn't stop eating. Anything of the adult genre?
Oh, gee, I don't have much time for that.
I thought he was going somewhere very different with that question.
That's understandable. I'd be interested to know more.
That's a different podcast.
Different podcast, different genre. Dark Emu is something I've been trying to read for some time now by Bruce Pascoe. It's turning on its head the way we view Indigenous Australians and their label of hunter-gatherer. So really actually a fascinating read.
Oh, that sounds really good. I'd have to pick that one up next.
What have you read recently, Karter?
The latest book I've been reading is Honeybee by Craig Silvey, about a 14-year-old who is coming to terms with whether he's transgender or just figuring out a whole lot of things when there's a whole lot of complications in his life as well. So it's actually, I found it really good. Yeah.
Heavy stuff.
Felix and Bagel, tell me about your week. Anything interesting happening this week?
Mine's been exhausting. I was a ninja spy mission coordinator this week.
That sounds pretty good. How do I sign up to that?
You're already signed up, Karter. You're a dad of two boys. I'm not sure what's harder, actually being a ninja spy mission coordinator or keeping up the imaginary play with my kids for as long as they want to play ninja spies with me.
Yeah, I can feel your pain. I mean,
it's exhausting.
Yeah, I get that. How about you, Bagel? How's your week been? Anything interesting happen?
Well, I'm traveling up in Sydney at the moment. Other than that, it's been a very relaxing week, actually. Not working, just enjoying myself and relaxing for the longest break I've had in I don't even know how long.
I don't think we've actually talked about this, but Bagel, where are you from?
I am a Melbourne boy.
Ah, and I don't know why I'm saying that like I'm surprised. I knew that. And Felix, are you from Melbourne as well?
Well, I am your brother, Karter, so I'm from the same town of Sydney as you.
This is true. So Felix and I are from Sydney, and Bagel's from down in Melbourne, so all in Australia.
And for those tuning from overseas, yes, we do ride kangaroos to school.
I don't anymore. I'll break its back. But back when I was at school, yes, I did.
I flattened mine long ago. I'm a heavy boy now.
It's all those bagels.
Way too many bagels.
So I'm glad you asked about how my week was.
How was your week, Karter?
Loser.
So I was actually earlier this week talking to my boys, and we're talking about what we're going to buy with the gift money from Christmas. And they came up with some crazy things that, like cars, like their little electric cars that they wanted to ride in, and they wanted to have a cubby house built and all this sort of thing. I said, boys, where do you think money comes from? And they said, doesn't it grow on trees?
The old line.
The old line, doesn't money grow on trees? So I said, no, it doesn't grow on trees.
Didn't it used to grow on trees? Like, oh, well, in fact, in some countries it still does, because paper money comes from the paper tree, right?
Well, I'm already lost on the saying. I thought the saying was money doesn't grow on trees.
Thanks for that. I did my best, okay?
Please keep that in. Please don't edit that out. Just keep that whole interaction in, please.
You think I'm going to bother editing any of this?
Who's got time for that?
Interesting you say that it grows on trees. I didn't look too far back, but paper money isn't paper anymore. It's actually cotton and linen.
Get out.
Yeah, so anyway, that was one of the rabbit holes I went down, but
so
not the main one.
When people talk about paper money, it's a complete misnomer.
I assume it did come from it at one point, but yeah, absolutely, it's not paper.
Well, isn't it the US currency? Isn't the US currency still technically paper?
No, not in America. That is definitely cotton and linen.
Oh, what's that?
Polymer. When I started to look at where does money come from, there was two things that kept getting my attention. And that was money laundering and money counterfeiting. And those who know me, I'm sure would realize that it wouldn't take me long to get stuck into these two things. So I didn't worry about where money came from anymore. I wanted to know where fake money came from. Now, each of these topics are an episode in themselves. So I have picked money counterfeiting to talk about today, but there's definitely a chance that I'll come back and revisit money laundering because it is a very interesting topic. In fact, if you don't like this report, you can blame it on the amount of time I spent on the money laundering rabbit hole. I love these rabbit holes that we go down to research our topics.
This is a very deep rabbit hole. A very deep rabbit hole. We've gone from where does money come from to counterfeiting money and money laundering.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you answering this question to your kids now.
So first off, I think I need to give a bit of a backstory about counterfeiting currency. It's hard to pinpoint when counterfeiting currency started.
That's a bit
But
of
it
a
is-
tongue twister, isn't it?
I'm really struggling with it.
Try and say it 5 times quickly. Counterfeiting currency. Quite as it's I got lost on the second one.
Stroke, are you okay?
Try it, Bagel. Try it.
Counterfeiting currency. Yeah, no, I'm gone.
Yeah.
It is. It's a tongue twister. At least you can go back to your kids and say, "Hey, look, I can't tell you where money comes from, but I've got a great tongue twister for you guys."
So it's hard to pinpoint when counterfeiting. Oh dear, you got me.
Wow.
It's hard to pinpoint when counterfeiting currency started, but it is clear that whenever there was currency in society, counterfeiting follows. One of the earliest known currency counterfeits happened before coins or banknotes. Around 3,300 to 2000 BCE, cowrie shells were used as currency. Now, they're the shells that sort of double up over itself. Is that a good
They're
description?
very cool. They've kind of like got claws or it kind of
Yeah.
like a claw coming in together. It's very pretty shell.
Well, so pretty they decided it was worth money.
Yeah.
These were imitated by ivory, bone, clam shells, and stone that were actually carved out to be a similar shape.
Okay, so hang on a sec. To counterfeit the cowrie shells, they went and cut some tusks off some elephants
Yeah.
and spent a long time carving them into things that look like cowrie shells.
That's how valuable cowrie shells were back then.
That's
Little did they
amazing.
know if they kept the tusks and left it for a couple of thousand years, boy, would they be rich.
That's exactly right.
They'd also be in prison.
Well, that too. Semantics.
So to put this into perspective, 3,500 BCE was roughly when bronze was discovered in Egypt. 3,100 BCE was the first dynasty of Egypt. And 3,000 BCE was when early writing has been discovered. Moving forward to around 400 BCE, the time when Greece tried to take over the world and got pretty close. And as we move into more traditional forms of money, Greek counterfeiters used less valuable metals and then a layer of precious metal over the top to mimic real coins.
Were there any elephants hurt in the process?
No.
So like gold plating coins, essentially.
Exactly. Maybe bronze?
We've moved forward. They must have, I think World Wildlife Fund were speaking out about the cowrie shell counterfeiters.
I think they were big around this time, yeah.
Yeah.
The WWF, they'll get you. They'll get you.
If they don't, Sea Shepherd will.
Now, moving a bit further forward into the 17th century, in England, it was common to shave off parts of a coin and then melt those shavings down and to fill a mold. At this time, it was found that 1 in 10 British coins were counterfeited.
So the coin, you shave a little bit of a coin off,
Yep.
and it doesn't. It still holds the same value.
Of course, because that's a coin,
Yeah,
not a
but then
weight.
you get enough of those shavings,
Yeah.
and you can make entirely new coins.
I couldn't have said it any better.
That's impressive.
That's wild.
I mean, no, that's highly illegal. Highly illegal. What were they thinking?
Definitely not going to start doing it yourself.
Not at all.
An interesting side note here was that in 1690, Sir Isaac Newton, the guy who formulated the law of motion and gravity, who also happened to be the warden of the Royal Mint at the time, was tasked with stopping the situation from re-emerging. This led to the capture of William Shalona, whose counterfeits had the face value of £30,000 at the time, or in today's value of 10 million Australian dollars.
It's a nice little business.
It's doing all right. Not bad.
William was hanged for his crimes.
A little bit less fun.
Worth it?
Not really, no. Probably not.
I'm sure he would have lived a great life when he was alive.
Maybe it was worth it then.
Yeah. So another interesting fact I found was that rather than banknotes used today, in Australia in the early European colonization times, promissory notes or personal IOUs, which were redeemable for coins, were used.
That cannot be counterfeitable shortly.
You wouldn't think so, right?
Not an IOU on a post-it note.
This is a flat IOU on a napkin at the bar.
It's funny you say that, because if these were issued by the government, they would look fairly official, but individuals were handing out IOUs that often looked to be on notes on scrap pieces of paper.
That's so Australian, isn't it? Like, oh, she'll be right, mate. Yeah, it looks good enough.
Yeah, I'm not even mad at that, to be honest. I'm almost proud.
So as you guys have alluded to, it isn't a surprise that the system was taken advantage of and a large number of forgeries were in circulation at the time.
No.
We are kind
surprise,
of
right?
dealing with a colony of convicts here.
I was going to say, I really feel like they didn't think this one too well through.
So there have been a number of measures over the years to counter counterfeiting, but I think one of the leaders, and not to blow our own horn, is Australia. And I would say it's simple, but I'm sure it wasn't quite so simple. The way that Australia did this was to switch to polymer banknote.
Wasn't the other one also, if you just scull a beer like Bob Hawke, it's just automatically considered non-counterfeit anyway?
I thought the polymer notes were just brought in so that when you put your notes in your pocket and they went through the washing machine, they wouldn't fall to pieces.
That was the other great reason.
Yeah, massive bonus. Massive bonus. I put so many $10 notes through the washing machine.
I'm glad I don't use notes anymore.
I mean, I've done maybe the occasional headphone and AirPod, but that's about it, really. No money. Which,
Did
to
you
be honest,
say
I think I wish it was.
hedge fund?
No, AirPod.
Oh, I heard hedge fund.
Headphone.
But Bagel, you're probably too young to even know what a note is, aren't you? Did you ever carry notes?
I did occasionally. Very rarely. Very rarely.
Okay.
I think I have one in my wallet, actually.
Frame it.
Don't know what for, though.
I can't remember the last time I carried a note.
I know what it was for. It's for my barber, who only does cashies for you know why.
Won't mention who your barber is then.
I believe that's actually the money laundering side, but that's another episode entirely.
Just to go back a little bit, over the years there have been a number of different tactics to try and avoid counterfeit, using intricate designs, individual serial numbers on the note, among a number of other things. But Australia's been one of the world leaders in using polymer notes, which has massively helped with forgeries. In 1998, Australia became the first country in the world to develop and produce polymer banknotes.
So we came a long way from the IOUs on a piece of paper. How about that, Australia?
I mean, it only took 100 years, but yet we got there.
200 years?
It only took 200 years, but we got there.
Do not edit that.
Since then, over 20 countries around the world have adopted polymer banknote for one or more denomination. A subsidiary of the Reserve Bank of Australia, Note Printing Australia, produces the majority of these. So why polymer? Well, that's a good question.
Why polymer, Karter?
Well, two big reasons: a durability and difficulty to counterfeit. Bang. There it is.
Out.
But did you know, I'm going a little bit off topic here, the IMF says polymer banknotes are better for the environment than other materials used today. According to an environmental study commissioned by the Bank of Canada in 2011, polymer outperformed paper at all stages of the production lifestyle. And by that, I'm also going to assume they mean cotton. Some of the anti-counterfeit measures that the polymer notes have implemented, I'm sure you guys know, give giving you carry around your $5 notes or $10 notes everywhere.
Not anymore.
There are 3D images, which I don't think is possible on the paper notes. There's holograms of flying birds. They actually really like using holograms in these things because the numbers actually reverse depending on what angle you show it at.
That's cool.
Now, when they first came in, they came in with a window. I'm sure we all remember just the window, the oval window down the right-hand side. Or I suppose it depends on which side you're looking at it, but down the bottom on one side. And then it's actually now a see-through section on the middle. One that's often used is microprint, which is tiny, clear, defined text in the middle of the notes. But did you know that if you were to shine a fluorescent light on a note, it actually changes color?
Really? That's wild.
They actually go, so the birds, which are sort of an orangey or blue, just go green, like stark green, and then the flowers go red.
That's just for people in raves to be able to hold it up and go.
It's real. It's real, people.
Mama, I did it.
You can also use them in the toilets of train stations where they have those cool. Are they fluorescent? No, they're ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet. But it is funny you mentioned that because a report in the US actually showed that 90% of paper money in the US was found to have traces of cocaine on it. So I suspect that was used in a few toilets.
90%.
90%. It's a lot, isn't it? I suppose it goes around a few times. I think they go out like 20 times or something.
I guess they also go through, machines where there's other notes with traces of cocaine, and so it kind of like spreads, even if, not every note is actually used to snort with. That's all I'm saying. So do put the drugs disclaimer at the beginning of this episode. Drug use. This episode of Down the Rabbit Hole.
Use. Who's been using drugs?
Damn it, I was going to use that. Sorry. This episode of Down the Rabbit Hole
has completely confused Bagel.
I'm so confused.
Is for mature audiences. It contains drug use.
I don't. Who's using drugs?
Drug reference, thank you very much.
Drug references. Yes, no drug use.
I'm actually just going to stitch that together, so that's exactly... This episode contains drug use. Drug reference, thank you very much.
It'll work.
So I think that pretty much brings me to the bottom of the rabbit hole.
So, Karter, going back to the original question that you were asked by your kids, how would you answer that now?
Well, if you were in 800 BCE, I would say from the beach.
True. I see what you did there.
Now, I would say it's printed in a factory based on plastic. But if you're in America, it grows on a plant.
That silkworms enjoy. Habitate.
Right.
Not quite.
No? Don't silkworm. Oh, no. Cotton worms.
No, it's a cotton bush.
What kind of worms go on cotton bushes? Here's another rabbit hole for us.
Cotton worm, obviously. So to end, other than that great joke just there, as every week, we finish with a dad's joke, and this week it's about counterfeiting, but not currency. Let me know what you think. My boss asked me to buy a counterfeit detector pen. I said, I'll just get the real ones.
Hey.
Ah.
Nice.
It's always good when you get a slow clap. Bagel, how's the best way to contact you?
Well, I'm on Instagram at NorthBagel, so you can find me there.
Sounds good. And Felix?
I think I'm on Instagram now. I'm not on social media until you told me I had to. So I think you can get me on Felix the Newton. I might also be on Facebook, but I don't know if it's the same thing or not.
You sound very computer literate there.
Oh dear.
So I am actually like Felix. I haven't been on social media up until this point. So if you see very few followers, please feel sorry for me and follow me and send me a DM or whatever they say. My handle is at Karter J Newton. Felix and Bagel, thank you for joining us for another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Thank you for the listeners for joining us for this episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you did really like the show, recommend it to a friend. It really does make a difference to get the show out there. You can find our socials on our website, rabbitholepod.com, or in the show notes below. We have a form that will allow you to suggest a topic, ask the host a question, or suggest a recommendation for Bagel's next tattoo. You can find this on our website or in the show notes below. Remember, we are no experts, so if you'd like to connect, condemn, or congratulate us, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.